from the experiences there, I cannot share most of the outcomes, maybe afterwards. But what I note from that is that I think governments and the prospecting institutions need to include the local communities at all levels. Most instances, the mechanisms in place leave out the local communities at the design. They begin bringing them when some revenues are beginning to come in. And this is important in that it helps even identify local means in which more revenues can be generated. Two, it increases ownership and transparency, so that even when revenues reduce, still the communities know what is taking place and they don't begin getting suspicious of the mechanisms. Then the last but not least, I want to end with a question to I think it is the cost cutting. Looking at benefit sharing, especially with regard to genetic materials. I see, for example, in Uganda we have a tree which is called Prunus africana, which has been found to be holding genetic materials for curing many diseases. And very many companies, very many people are beginning to exploit this tree. So which mechanisms can we institute in benefit sharing mechanisms such that such species are not exploited and even possibly extincted? Thank you very much.
I think I have two more hands that I'm going to take. To start here, and then Krishna, and then we'll answer this round.
My name is Jayant Sarnaik. I represent Applied Environment and Research Foundation, a conservation NGO working in the Western Ghats for the last 15 years from India. And I very much agree with the first statement made by a German colleague, that what are we going to learn from the past? This, I think, in my opinion, accessibility, this Nagoya Protocol, it has come too late in terms of, because we already have, we are lost out on many species in the world, and people are only bothered about tigers, but I think we do not know how many plants we have actually lost. I can give you a good example of, and I think this needs to be built in, because we have to learn from what has gone wrong in the past. I can share an experience from India. I'm talking about that does access and benefit sharing means sustainable harvesting. It is not. I mean, if we allow, we will open new gates to companies or communities and they keep exploiting resources they used to do, then we will lose out on more species. I give you an example of, a long-term project that was funded by Danida in India for establishing medicinal plants conservation areas where benefit sharing and access has been tested, and it failed completely because they selected the wrong species. They selected species for conservation and also utilization, a species which is Gymnema sylvester, and that plant cannot be propagated ex situ. So because they thought that it is very exciting ideas to provide access to the communities to those resources, that they assume that they will be harvesting sustainably. Now this particular plant or whatever the climber is totally disappeared from the Western Ghats. I think this is something that needs to be also as a feedback, or whatever case studies you want to make under this Nagoya Protocol, that we should learn from these failures, otherwise we will be losing out on, and India has got a very established herbal industry, Ayurveda. So there are so many factories and so many companies who have been extracting medicinal plants from the wild, that there could be some success, good stories also, good practices also, but I think we need to understand that because of Nagoya, implementation of Nagoya Protocol, we should not lose out on more plants. Yeah, thank you.
I am Krishna Oli from representing International Center for Integrated Mountain Development based in Kathmandu. I have, it's great to hear actually. I congratulate both the ladies because this is a new and emerging issue. I have some concern specifically to, to the case studies here. One is, you have mentioned this sweetening genetic resources, which has earned multi-billion dollar or billions of dollars over there. Is there anything that in this case history that you are also bringing this issue so that some benefit can be brought to this park area? So that is one thing, because although it is before Nogoya, I think, but still there is importance here. And particularly in the case study, I think it is very important, the benefit sharing mechanism between park and the government and the community. What percentage or, how it is going to be developed, because this will be very helpful for us also. And is this a umbrella legislation of ABS or, specifically addressing ABS mechanism of protected area one? Is this a national ABS umbrella legislation, or it is specifically addressing to the, issues of protected area? That is for Barbara. And of course, monitoring mechanism. What will be the monitoring mechanism later on, when benefit stream starts coming? Because these are some of the very, very important issues that we in the emerging, development field of ABS, we need to consider. So this is for Barbaraji. And then for Oli, I think it is very interesting that you brought, these legal aspects. I have one question, because we have been documenting this traditional knowledge also. And particularly, you talk of, these community protocols and customary legal arrangement. What will be the legal validity of these customary arrangements, if, for example, if one violates it? So the community may fine you 5,000 or 10,000 US dollar or something and put this, or can it be challenged into the court or sued into the court? So that is one thing. And the other thing is, you have brought so many pieces of legislation. Of course, there will be so many pieces of legislation throughout the world, every developing country also. You can't avoid that. But when ABS legislation comes later on, so this might prevail. And do we have to worry about all these laws, legal hurdles into different things? So that is another thing, and I think I will stop here. And community expectation, of course, the moment we enter into this area, there is expectation. Otherwise, why should we work on ABS? If community don't get any benefit, then I think we better stop also. This happens. So expectation is there, but how we can address these things? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krishna.
This isn't actually a question, but I think it's really important not to be overly fatalistic about the prospects, because hindsight is 20/20. But I'd like to propose to you whether protected areas have actually been successful. Realistically, this is a new and emerging area of law, and if we simply say, "Oh, this is too good to be true," why are we even bothering going down this path? Then we're certainly limiting ourselves to current models which have actually failed quite severely.
Just see the reality.
Yeah, everyone here sees the reality. We're all here at the World Conservation Congress. We all see that there's a major problem going on. But if we're going to be fatalistic, you might as well just go jump off a bridge. So let's stick to the fact that there are possible opportunities. There's been some success. So I just want to focus on that. I actually work for the ABS Capacity Development Initiative, so I'll say that I have perhaps an interest in this. But again, I'm working for them because I try and have some belief in perhaps trying to engage communities further, trying to make sure that benefits are shared. Obviously, it does seem too good to be true, but at the same time, still got to give it a shot.
Okay. All right, I guess we're already in the discussion part, aren't we? I like that. Yes, okay. I'm going to take a stab at most of these questions and then also give my colleagues a chance to answer. Lights? Lights, please.
The lights? Could you turn it off?
Thank you. So that you can actually see these wonderful people sitting here. Are you awake again? Okay. All right, just to try and take this in order, although I think there were two questions and remarks that were related, which was one was the question of how do you avoid abuse and how do you avoid corruption in the system. The other one was the concern with over-harvesting, with unsustainable use of the resources through people wanting to participate in ABS. And I think both are very, very valid points. I mean, we're setting up systems here that will only work if there's a certain measure of control, and that means both control avoiding benefits ending up in pockets, avoiding elite capture, both at the national level and at the local level. Certainly a big influence of cash can also do a lot of damage in a lot of places. None of us, I think, is immune to that. And the concern with the over-harvesting, I think is a valid one too. And of course, the protocol talks about access in the sense of non-damaging access and sustainable access. And the idea behind it is to incentivize the sustainable use of the resource, because if it is the kind of resource that can only grow in a certain locality, or can only be found in a certain locality, then as soon as that resource has been over-harvested and disappeared, then that's the end of the flow of benefits. That is obviously problematic. That is true for every use of resource that is out there. And it is then obviously the challenge to devise ways of harvesting these resources, and those solutions need also to be found at the national, at the local level, to avoid cashing in on the unsustainable harvest of those resources, and then it's gone. I think it's not particular to ABS, but it's a challenge. The same thing with governance transparency, accountability of officials, of local level authorities. That too, it is a challenge. I'm not going to deny that. It's not a challenge that's specific to ABS either. Parks officials who line their pockets with entrance fees abound. Same thing. It's not specific to the protected area context either. I mean, I think when we set up these systems, be it payment for ecosystem services, be it payment through RED, be it any type of financial transfer to incentivize conservation, the logic behind it is clear. Benefits that will incentivize people to use and protect resources in a certain way, but you will always have that challenge of governance, and it's something that needs to be taken into account. In terms of will governance make sure that the benefits also reach the local level, that will depend on the country and the government. We work with some governance where I would actually say with confidence that they have understood the issue and that they will strive towards going there, and there's governments that already have legislation in place, like South Africa, where they give quite extensive rights to the local communities in terms of ownership of resources and knowledge. There will be other countries where it will be much more difficult and challenging. And we try to work not only with the government representatives of the countries, we work with a number of stakeholders, including representatives of indigenous organizations in Africa, specifically with the Indigenous Information Network and with IPAC. And we do a lot of capacity development with these organizations with the hope that they can engage also at the national level and demand to be heard on these issues and demand to be engaged in the decision making and demand that exactly that happen at the national level. As a capacity development organization, that's more or less what we feel we can contribute to bring people to the table and to give them the information and the possibility to engage with these things. And then of course a lot will depend on what context and what country we're talking about. I do not think necessarily that the Nagoya Protocol or ABS makes any of those things worse. I think these are challenges that need to be addressed. I'm not quite sure that without it, it would be any better. I think what would happen without it is that bioprospecting would continue the way it's always continued. Companies would reap the benefits of that bioprospecting. Those benefits would leave the country, they wouldn't return, and neither the governments, nor the local communities, nor the national research sector would necessarily benefit from it. So that would be my take on it. Before, do you want to say something to that issue directly? Okay.
No, I wanted to talk, say a few words on the over-exploitation issue.
Okay.
When we talk about ABS, we have to carefully differentiate between one-time access, where a researcher goes into a protected area or somewhere else and collects for one time a certain amount of material, which he then extracts a biological compound or a genetic sequence, which can then be used further on in the laboratory, where he doesn't have to go back to collect and continuously to collect and to harvest the resource. We have on the other side a lot of examples which usually apply to, especially to the cosmetic sectors, where companies are relying on a continuous supply of material from certain plants, where they extract, do research and development, which have then ABS implications, and which they integrate then in their products, in their body gels and creams and shower gels and so on. So we have to clearly differentiate. There are two situations for ABS. One-time access, usually high-tech, biotech kind of research, what is actually took place with the Taumatin case Barbara was talking about. The company which is now commercial, the companies which are commercializing and producing Taumatin, they don't need to go back to Thai National Park or to West Africa to collect the plant where the Taumatin was extracted from. They identified the gene, which was then transferred to apples, which was then transferred to corn, and it's now being produced with corn plants in the US, and from there it gets into the chewing gums and all the products where you see today this I don't know what, on the list of ingredients. So that was a kind of one-time access, where the researcher gets access and never has to go back to the source. In many other cases, researchers have to go back to the resource, and the companies which are commercializing a product have to grow and get access to permanently plant. There's a risk of overexploitation. But that is not a risk which is imminent to the Nagoya Protocol and to ABS. That's a general problem of any product, whether it's biotrade or ABS, or biotrade only traded as a commodity, like any kind of plant and any. So you have to solve these problems, and there are methods and methodologies to do that. And there's a CITES convention, for example, which is coming in that place. And for example, Prunus africana was for a long time, or is still, I think, CITES listed, and the EU even imposed an import ban for Prunus africana for quite some time because of the commercial overexploitation, which completely led to a breakdown of Prunus africana harvesting in Cameroon. I don't know exactly what happened in Uganda. But in Cameroon, it completely led to a breakdown of the commercial Prunus africana harvesting and export. And only now it's slowly coming back and recovering, and also the Prunus abundance in Cameroon was also recovering. And so there are mechanisms, and CITES can be effectively used in such cases to regulate and to avoid overexploitation. We had the example of Houdia from southern Africa involving the San people. And there was also the time when Houdia was only collected from the wild, that overexploitation was actually taking place. And then the company who wanted to commercialize started to cultivate Houdia with an outgrowing scheme with Houdia growers in southern Africa and South Africa. And also there was a CITES ban. And the South African authorities decided to set up or to put to allow the export of cultivated Houdia if the Houdia grower would get only the CITES permit for the export if he pays a levy on base for the traditional knowledge which actually was utilized and led to the commercialization of the Houdia plant to a Houdia trust fund, which would then go back and support projects of the San communities. So CITES and the CITES export mechanism was actually used to get benefits from commercial hoodia growers who would export hoodia as a commodity. So there are mechanisms, and there can be, with enough creativity among those who are being involved, mechanisms being established where benefits are actually and can go flow back to ILCs. Of course, corruption, that's the overall problem. And I think the Nagoya Protocol will not solve that.
No, but in some cases. It increased it in some cases.
It increases in every case where money is flowing in. And shall we prevent money flowing in through benefit sharing scheme under the Nagoya Protocol? Or should we also stop then tourism to the Kruger National Park or to any kind of business related to biodiversity in developing countries because of corruption? If that is the case, I would have better have stayed back home with my family instead of being here.
Okay, just to, because we have only 5 minutes left, I just wanted to give a quick, Dorothy also wanted the mic. I just wanted to, there was one question about the legislation in Ivory Coast. The original legislation was actually pretty specific on